is Ann Egger. I'm the PI on this project, Teaching with Investigation and Design in the Undergraduate Science Classroom. And we're going to go ahead and get started first with our Code of Conduct. This is both an NAGT event and a TIDES event, and we provide and expect a professional and respectful atmosphere and value diverse views and opinions. So please, in the conversations that we have today, treat other participants with respect, be considerate, collegial, and collaborative. We will have opportunities to communicate today, so please do so openly. And if you are critiquing, please critique ideas rather than individuals. And we will frame discussions openly and inclusively. If any of this is not happening, please let one of the leaders know. Okay, so let's start with some introductions. As I said, my name's Ann Egger. I'm at Central Washington University, where I have a joint appointment in geological sciences and science and math education. So I'm deeply involved in preparing future teachers and preparing them to teach earth science in addition to be teachers. And that is what led me to lead this project and recognize that we have a lot of work to do in the way we prepare the people that will be teaching earth science into the future. So I'm going to let my four co-leaders here introduce themselves just really briefly, and I'm going to actually stop sharing so that you can see them. So
my name was next.
Natalie first. Yep.
Hi, I'm Natalie Burston. I teach at the University of Montana in Missoula. I have a group of students that are specifically trying to get in the education program who take my physical science class, and I also teach introductory earth system science.
Okay, Mark.
Hi, I'm Mark Abelins. I'm at Middle Tennessee State University. I was involved in TIDES, and I'm here today primarily to speak with people who are interested in using it in auditorium settings, 70 plus students.
Mark looks like he's calling from his car, so I hope you're not actually driving right now.
I'm not. No.
Okay, good.
I'm parked.
Okay, Sandra.
Hi, I am Sandra Penny. I work at Russell Sage College, which is in Albany and Troy, New York. I am primarily a physics teacher here, but I also teach a science class for budding budding K-12 teachers, which is the topic that I have used for this course.
And Karen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Karen Biskupik. I'm at Boise State University in Idaho. I was part of the earth science team for TIDES, and I use that in a general education class that isn't specifically for future teachers, but it does attract a lot of future teachers.
Okay, so now we want to hear a little bit about you, except I have to get back to my slides. Nope. Hang on. Sorry. Operator error. Let's try this again. There we go. Okay. So a little bit more about you. So we have a couple of poll questions. First of all, to start with. So Holly, if you want to put up those poll questions. So there are, oh, sorry, you don't have to answer the last one, just 1 through 3. All right. I think that might be everyone who's not a presenter. Okay, I think if I end the poll. Yeah. Can everybody see the results now? No. Share results. Can you see the poll now? Yes. Okay. Great. So we have a lot of you are already teaching an introductory earth or physical science course. A few of you know, a few not yet. Yay. And a range, the full range of number of students enrolled in your classes. So that's great. That also reflects our leaders who were developing the materials and implementing them. And then this also reflects the proportion of students enrolled have a major in education or plan to be a teacher at any level. So many of you don't know, most are less than 20% and a few, I guess one person more than 50%. We'll worry about the last question a little bit later. But like I said, this reflects many of our leaders and who were developing and implementing the courses themselves. So one more thing about getting to know you, we're going to do a question called a waterfall. So the way this works is that you type a response to the question that I will let you know what it is in a moment, but don't hit return. Don't hit return until I tell you to. So the question is, I am a scientist and finish that phrase and describe something that's important to you and your identity and that informs how you approach the world or how you approach your teaching. And take a second to do that. Don't hit return. Just get it all typed up.
Where do you type it?
In the chat. So you can open up the meeting chat and go ahead and type it in the box to everyone. And then I'll give you another 10, 15 seconds. Mark, you jumped the gun. I didn't say hit return yet. Okay, and hit return. A knitter, a science educator concerned about the world around me, research teach informal groups of many ages, teacher, I want to help people, I see connections everywhere. I like that. Father, I ask questions that can be investigated. I'm curious about nature, citizen of the world, looking for ways to find function in real life applications. Mom, worried about the climate. Scientist and I knit things and I wonder, I love the outdoors. I'm a gardener right now who is tearing out her tomato and tomatillo plants and wondering what to do with all of the green things. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for taking a second to think about your identity. And I want you to just now take a second to what did I do just there? What are we doing by having these introductions? And really what we're trying to do, we know we have some professional things that we share together. You all got interested in this webinar for one reason or another, and it's something to do with your teaching likely. But we all bring our backgrounds and perspectives and ideas and cultures and other identities to our work as well. And this project really values that complete person, both as the instructor and absolutely as our students. So we try to do that in all of our work, is to really show that we value you as a person and everything you bring to the classroom. So what is TIDES? Our vision is that future teachers will learn science as undergraduates the way they are expected to teach science in the K-12 classroom. And that comes with an assumption that all undergraduates are future teachers, or potential future teachers, whether or not they know it while they are undergraduates. They may become teachers in the future. So the project has two big goals. The first is to engage and support faculty in developing, testing, and implementing these materials, and then assessing the impact of their use. So we're really focused on this goal here as part of this webinar. We have the new materials developed, tested, and implemented, and now we're working on broadening the implementation of those materials. Everything we do is based on these 4 guiding principles: that students will engage in scientific investigation and engineering design to deepen their understanding of core ideas. Some of you who are more familiar with the next generation science standards will recognize this phrasing very clearly. If you don't, it doesn't matter. Faculty and the curricular materials they use will cultivate a learning environment where all students have equal access to learning and feel valued and supported in their learning. So we started at the beginning with valuing who you are and what you bring to this webinar. Students will engage in addressing questions and solving problems that are relevant to their lives. And we'll talk about different kinds of relevance, what that means. And students will engage in authentic and meaningful scenarios that make use of real data and models and reflect the actual practice of science and engineering. So how do we put those principles into action? So this is where a very rigorous development and testing process was in place for these materials. I have a screenshot of part of the rubric that our materials had to pass. If you want to follow that QR code, that will take you to a web page with all of the information about the rubric and the research that shows the development and testing of those materials and the observations we made. But we're also promoting the use of these materials to broaden the people that have access to these rigorously developed materials. So those guiding principles are encoded in the rubric. They're right there at the top, but they're also embedded in each other component of the rubric. And there are 6 areas and 26 criteria total. So how are these materials different than what you're currently doing or currently using, or just what's generally out there in terms of introductory science classes? So we do more of students doing stuff and less of instructors talking about stuff. More of a focus on building skills in investigation and less of a focus on building content knowledge. Content knowledge is there and is an important part, but it's really built on the framework of skills in investigation. More of students engaging in productive discourse and less of instructors lecturing. This is kind of a weird sentence, more of fewer topics in greater depth and less of touching on lots of topics. And I know you're all familiar with that in looking at most introductory textbooks. There's lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of topics. And finally, a focus on developing a science identity and sense of belonging for all students, and less of a focus on performance mastery or the grade and gatekeeping that sometimes happens in intro courses. So we now have 2 full courses of teaching materials in earth science and physical science, and you can follow that QR code to see those now or later. I'll put that code up at the end, and also we'll put links in the chat. And we're going to hear from our two instructors from each of those courses, a little bit more about each of them. There's a lot there, so you will definitely want to take time after the webinar to look through them. But this is what we have available. I want to give you just a tiny glimpse of the project-wide results of some of the research. So one of the things that we did was use the COPUS, the Classroom Observation Protocol for Undergraduate STEM, to look for changes in how instructors who were involved in the development taught. So there are 3 different, on the diagram on the right, you can see the lighter gray is pre-implementation, so before we did anything, and then as it gets darker, those are into multiple iterations of implementing the new materials. And what this is showing, what this is showing, and there's a lot of stuff on here, but we're overall seeing a decrease in the amount of time that instructors spend presenting, more time spent guiding, and a decrease in the amount of time that students spend receiving or just, being passive listeners, and more time of them spent working. So these are kind of moving in the right direction. Overall, what we see from student results of a pre-post survey is that students gain confidence in their ability to do science. And that's regardless of the discipline. They're thinking about being able to transfer their science skills to other courses. Students and instructors are engaging in more productive discourse. Instructors' practices become more aligned with their beliefs as they use these materials more and see how discourse and engagement, investigation, and design work. And instructors and students alike are more satisfied. They enjoy the learning and the teaching more. Is there a place where we can get these slides notes? Yes, I will link them onto the webpage when we are finished. Okay, so we're going to hear from Natalie and Karen about their experiences in their classes, and Natalie's going to start us off with physical science.
Okay, so I call this class Forces of Nature. The full title is what you see on the screen, which is very unappealing, but it's what it's been named. That course, in the 4 years I've been teaching it, has only ever had 2 non-pre-education majors in it. I don't know, those 2 psychology students randomly wandered in. Other than them, it's exclusively been feature teacher planners. I set it up for the last 3 years as an integrated lecture lab because it is physics and geoscience, to have master's students in earth science be expected to teach the labs, which is where the fundamental part of the science is taught, with necessarily no physics background, 0 teaching background, and very limited scopes as master's students, was just insane. So I got permission to get that switched. And now I have the TAs in the class with me. It takes more of my time in some respects, but less of my time trying to teach master's students concepts they don't know. For the pilot, it was kept at 28. Then the class got moved to a different room that held more students. And this semester I'm running it in that same room, and it is full and there's no breathing room. So they keep trying to squish a few more in there. Next slide. I can click through, please, until it's populated. Thanks. So the scope that Sandra and I put together for our vision of the physical sciences TIDES module was 4 cycles of learning. The first is introducing what is science and what is a scientist. It's a 1-week unit, and it's strongly scaffolded with a lot of personal relevance. The next cycle, the next 2 cycles are much bigger, 4 to 5 weeks, and they both serve to build a lot of content while decreasing the scaffolding and increasing students' emphasis on experimentation, autonomy, planning their own investigations and experiments in order to learn that content. And then by cycle 4, which is a little bit shorter, we introduce forces at the very end. And it's very much applied. So you could think about cycle 4 as our engineering dominated unit. So then the next one, I explain the point of this using cycle 3 as an example. So in my previous version of teaching this physics and geoscience class before TIDES, I thought about it as topics. So density and buoyancy would be covered in some regards with the context of ocean layers and ocean circulation. You'd probably see these traditional maps. I would teach about El Nino and La Nina events, and I would give students a model to do experiments with to interpret the layers of the ocean, which is the next animation that I did not manage to fix, evidently. So this is in fact, my class just did this morning, like right before this, hilariously. So this is a default model that never fails with hot and cold water. So it was the earlier vision, and it was like a week. And now in this iteration with the cycle cycle 3 with density and buoyancy, in the tides approach, the students are thinking not about specifically the ocean, but they're thinking about how we can use observations of things that are not observable in order to understand those things. So students are first learning how to make observations that are proxies. They're using them to interpret density and pressure in air in the atmosphere. Then they develop explanations for their observations, which are hypotheses, and then they learn that that is a hypothesis. And then we apply these to other systems. So you can see there's a syringe here that they use to practice proving the air is made of something. And then there's a graphic of the Argo buoy system, which my students just used this last week to make graphs. Next slide. And then today, this morning, they designed their own experiments for modeling the ocean. Here there's two odd ones, one with soap bubbles, one with glycerin below. But they've designed it after measuring the density of fluids and determining amongst their peers in their groups which fluids they're going to use to represent which parts of the ocean. And then they build their own model that they've designed and they run their own experiments. And then the last part of this is to apply it to current events. Which, for example, would be like this article that came out last year on the about the overturning, the shutdown of the oh my god, I can't find words. The potential near future shutdown of the Atlantic Marriott. What was that?
Gulf Stream.
The Gulf Stream for the so I guess short term is Gulf Stream. We could say Gulf Stream. The AMOC is what I was going for eventually. So once they understand the fundamentals of circulation, which they do after understanding the pieces that make up the stratigraphy of the ocean, then the applications to climate and economic impacts are things that they tend to be naturally more interested in. So we can go to the next. So my big takeaways from pre to post on tides was that tides curriculum really facilitated the emphasis of the practice of science rather than the content of science, which I felt like is inherently more interesting to young kids, but also much more tangible, especially to these students. And all of the things that we focus on in this curriculum, observe, measure, graph, interpret, hypothesize, experiment, model, and also fail, are parts of being a scientist. So it really helped me shift the focus into that direction. And I really do focus on the error aspect of trial and error and how that facilitates learning, which is why I have that little screenshot of the journal that should be Journal of Trial and Error. And this is a quote from a student below here. When building, creating, as well as calculating, I experienced outcomes that did not make sense and that I had to go back and redo as well as reevaluate, which allowed me to grow from my own mistakes and having a growth mindset. I believe that NGSS helps to facilitate teaching science with a growth mindset because you're focused on the skills you're practicing versus trying to get a specific answer. And especially in the earth sciences, I feel like that is especially true, but it's nice when a student recognizes that as well.
Awesome.
I think that's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Natalie. So that was from physical science, and Karen's going to talk now about the geoscience course.
Great. Hi, everyone. So the earth science team was made up of 4 people, and each of us taught class in a different way and used the tides materials, I think, in different ways. And there are instructor stories for each of us that are on the website. So I'll tell you a little bit about what I did, but you can hear about what my partners did in their own courses as well through those instructor stories. So I teach Geosciences 104, Geoscience and Society, and I started teaching this class maybe 5 or 6 years ago as an alternative to, we have 2 100 level classes that are general education, and they serve as entry points to our geoscience major. Because they serve as entry points, there are expectations among the faculty of what needs to happen in those courses. And I had been involved in the Integrate project on the assessment team and was excited about using some of those materials. And it seemed to me that the easiest way to do that was to make a new course where no one would be paying attention to what I was doing. I just remembered this is recorded and posted. So, so I started teaching Geosciences 104, Geoscience and Society, as a way to kind of teach an introductory course with no guardrails on it, using a bunch of material from Integrate and then from Getsy. And I was getting a lot of elementary majors enrolled in the class, and that was mostly by way of advising from the College of Education. And I had set this class up as a kind of friendly intro, small class kind of environment. So, okay, I'm getting off topic. So it's open to all students. It attracts a lot of elementary education majors. Because it satisfies a lecture with lab general education requirement, I'm required to have parts of the class that are called lecture and a part that is called lab. But in reality, the lecture and lab are integrated, and the things that we're doing in both of those class periods are similar. I just save the kind of lab activities for things that are I can kind of allow students more time to do. So longer activities, and those are things that they turn in for grading. I enroll about 30 students when I'm teaching it, and usually all but 2 or 3 are elementary or special education majors. And I have one graduate teaching assistant who helps with the lab. We co-teach the lab together. Okay. So as Natalie described and Anne described, the TIDES approach really focuses on the process of science. The Earth Science course covers topics in geology, astronomy, meteorology, and oceanography. And each of those units kind of scaffolds skills and builds with there's a driving question in mind. So you can see those driving questions that are part of the unit headings there. We built a bunch of recurring themes into the materials, and I will talk about each of those in the next few slides. So the first one is the Science and Engineering Practices web that came from a paper by Nyman and St. Clair in 2016. And so this is a representation of the science and engineering practices that are part of NGSS. And you can think of it as another model of the scientific process or the scientific method. And there are lots of great versions of that, out there that you can find. Almost all of them do have some sort of starting point, even if you can cycle back to that starting point in some way. What I really like about this Nyman and St. Clair model is that it's a circle, right? It's a web. There's no starting point. You can connect from any one of those practices to any other practice. And so we use this model throughout the course to have students reflect on the science and engineering practices that they're using in the course activities that they're doing. In all cases, I think this is built into each unit as part of an exit ticket where they're reflecting back on the things that they did as part of a unit and identifying the science and engineering practices they used. It's also built into some individual lessons where there's a reflection and students identify the practices they use. So I really like this model. I think it's great, and it really helps students to see that there's not any one path in science. There's not a starting point. There's not an ending point. Yes, lots of great things about it. Okay, students are also using real data throughout the course in all of the units, a lot of spatial data, a lot of maps. They're pulling data from different databases, and that can be scaffolded in different ways depending on the experience of your students. So in some cases, there are instructions for, go and download the US climate normals for a city of your choice, for example. Or there is a built-in data set that you can pull and just use that directly if you don't, if that's not something that you want to have your students do, to go and access the data and download it themselves. So different data sources are built in throughout the course. Okay. Students work in teams a lot, so they are building their collaboration and communication skills throughout the course. I think everyone knows what that means. We can keep going, Anne. This is another theme throughout the course. We used the TILT assignment template. So TILT is the Transparency in Learning and Teaching project. And there's a quote on that slide. That project aims to advance equitable teaching and learning practices that reduce systemic inequities in higher education. One of the ways this is done is through this assignment template so that students have a clear understanding of what they're being asked to do, why they're being asked to do it, what skills they can develop, and how they will be evaluated. So each of the assignments that you will find in the Earth Science course uses the same template where the purpose of the activity or assignment is clearly stated. There's a statement about what knowledge and skills students will build as a result of completing that assignment. There's a clear outline of the task. What are all the steps or the things that students need to do, and the criteria for evaluation. I think that using that template made all of us thoughtful about what we were asking students to do and why. As I said earlier, so each of the units has a kind of motivating question that guides the work within it, and we tried to make those motivating questions things that would be relevant to students' lives and would help to keep them engaged and interested throughout the course, and that works, right? So that is something that we see in our students, that they're engaged in what they're doing. Okay, we've also used scientist spotlights assignments throughout the course in each of the units, and this is something that I had used minimally in the past in my courses. Like I would use them more with kind of famous scientists or should be famous scientists like Marie Tharp. But we've built in scientist spotlights that ask students to look at the lives and work of like, I guess, everyday scientists who might not be famous. And this has also been really great for students, and something that that I continue to do in when I teach physical geology that does have guardrails on it. And so these are a few quotes from students in response to one of the reflection questions. The prompt is something like, you know, what did these resources make you think about the process of science and the people who do science? You know, and there's a lot of things that are coming out of that that I think are great, right? That science is collaborative and that science is ongoing, and that this is, you know, real people who are not famous, just regular people who are doing science, and they're doing important work. So I enjoy that as part of the lessons as well. I don't remember if I have another.
Yeah,
No,
that's it.
Okay.
Oops. Ah,
I'll stop.
I'm so sorry. This is feel inept today on the Google Slides. So like I said before they started, there's a lot in these materials, but I want to take a moment to go back to one of the guiding principles, the second one, about cultivating a learning environment where all students have equal access to learning and feel valued and supported. This is not just doing one thing to make a change, right? Like you can't just tweak one thing and make that happen. But Natalie and Karen both just talked about several things that they have done to get that kind of feedback from students, those kind of comments. So allowing for and celebrating both the students and all scientists as whole people, allowing time for that real learning to take place. And sometimes that's through failure. So both Karen and Natalie talked about reducing the number of topics, the number of, you know, having these sort of larger arcs of learning that are motivated by questions that students really want to address. And sometimes they fail and have to try again. Being transparent and explicit about what you were doing and why. So Karen talked about the TILT assignment, but the materials also throughout have learning goals, learning outcomes for each component of the activity. And we didn't talk about it today or share the ideas, but we also worked on syllabi and how that syllabi are the first opportunity for you to make your voice known to students, and then allowing everyone to have a voice in the class through discourse. And I'm going to talk just a little bit more about that, because this might not be something you've thought about too much. This phrase productive discourse emerged more out of the K-12 learning environment and Mark Winchettle's work, published in various forms, but in the 2015 Ambitious Science Teaching book, which has been really useful to us. So why do we want students to talk? Talking is actually a form of thinking. Having to put voice to your ideas is a form of thinking. And students talking makes their thinking apparent to us. It means that we have a chance for formative assessment, to hear what they're thinking in a way that we can respond to. Students' ideas are also resources for other students, and talking with each other is a way for them to further develop their own ideas. Talking helps us as teachers identify and understand who is silent, who is not talking, and why that might be the case, something to investigate further. Science talk is a specialized language, and just like learning French or Italian or Latin, there are things we can help our students, we can help them develop a science talk as a specialized language. So how do we do that? That all sounds great. It's a form of learning, but what does it mean? So take just a second to think about what productive discourse looks like in your life, and whether that's as a scholar talking to other people in your field, or other teachers, or as a friend. We think about talk moves in the classroom, but they reflect what we do in any conversation where we're trying to learn something from another person or collectively. So probing questions. What do you observe? What are you thinking right now? What can you see when you look at this map or this graph? Or pressing. So what makes you say that? Can you give an example of how that works? Can you give an example of what you just said you're thinking about? Revoicing, this is another important one. I think what I hear you saying is, or a geologist might say what you've just said in this way, or a physicist might say it in this way, using this science language. Or prompting that peer-to-peer discussion. Saying, who, Karen just made a comment. Who would like to add to that? Or Natalie, what do you think of what Karen just had to say? And that might seem really scary if you just did it once, right? But if that's something that's part of your constant work within your classroom, people get very used to that kind of setting and feel very comfortable presenting their opinions. Okay, how do we really do it? There's kind of the theory of things behind it, but part of this involves establishing class norms and expectations. Like I just said, you have expectations that people will be contributing, and you can work together to create class norms so that people feel they've had some input into those. Discussions also start with questions, which might reasonably have different responses or ideas. This is an important piece too. So not starting with a closed question, how thick is the troposphere? But instead, something that there might be different responses or ideas, or conversation starters, essentially open-ended questions. Allowing for think time. This can be nerve-wracking at first, but letting students think, letting them talk to each other, letting them write down ideas, the same kinds of things you have in conversation outside of the classroom. And then planning for equitable participation through strategies. Think, pair, share is one of those that can also be used inequitably, but we'll focus on it as a potential equitable participation, where you're really allowing every student to have some input. Doesn't mean they're all going to participate every time. That's not what equitable means. It means that everyone feels like they can contribute. So that was a whole lot of information. What we wanted to do is take about 10 minutes now to give you a chance to ask questions. We had some topics in mind. So is it possible, Holly, to put up the poll again, just the last question? We can also just do a show of hands if needed. Hi, everybody. Oh, and I see Beth has joined us too. Hi, Beth. So Beth's another one of our authors. Beth, I was just in the 2-year college room. So go ahead and raise your hand again, just so everyone can see you if you want to reach out to her with more 2-year college questions. She's there. We are nearing the end of the hour. If anyone wants to share something they learned in that last breakout session, please give a 20-second something you learned. We had a good conversation in the 2-year college room, and something I maybe did not make entirely clear is that the materials are freely available on the web for you to use and look through. So these are not hidden anywhere. They are live and available to you. So I just have one more slide, which I will put up. Trying to get faster at this. So again, the materials, and I think the link has been in the chat, but we can put it in again. Please do check those out. One of the things we talked about in my room is that transforming your introductory course may take more than just you doing something different. If you're in a 2-year college with articulation agreements, or in a 4-year college with lots of TAs and different people teaching that course, you might need to bring a group together in order to make change. Please get in touch if you're interested in doing that. We do have, in this phase of the project, we have funds for traveling workshops to send us out to you to bring those groups together and think about making change. And I also saw Liana Hinojosa joined us for the last few minutes here. We are working on some of the research papers that will be coming out in the next few months to show you some of the impact of these materials that we've seen both on students and on the instructors. So you can see our preliminary reports right now on the website, but we'll have more coming out in the future. So I want to thank everyone again for joining us today, and feel free to get in touch at any time. And I look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. This was a good one.